When you think of the knives of the Second World War, odds are you might be thinking of the Fairbairn-Sykes fighting knife, or the K-bar, or something exotic like the Smatchin. But one you might not be thinking about, but it's hugely ubiquitous, is this, the Nahkampfmesser. So this is the German close combat fighting knife. And these were available in their millions. And there are Luftwaffe versions and Wehrmacht versions all over where the German army operated. And they're a very simple design that were ubiquitous in World War I and World War II. There is some standardization to these, but there is also lots of cottage industry. But I'd say this is a fairly typical example here. So we've got a single edge and a slight back edge here. But I would say that these don't hold an edge phenomenally well. They are at their kind of best a thrusting tool. Simple, kind of chunk of metal, wooden handle, job's a good one. Now, these were available in huge quantities and were a great post-war memento. But if you think from the other side of the coin, I'll approach this video in two prospects. Let's take the Allied aspect first. Now, if you were carrying a Fairbairn-Sykes fighting knife, big alarm, wheel, 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 commando, 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 and it might be hard for you to get hold of them in sufficient quantities. These were everywhere. There were loads of them left after World War I, and there are loads of them available in World War II, and they are carried very ubiquitously, right? So getting used to being able to retain one, relatively easy to do. And also, and I think one of its best features, being able to conceal one. So you can see at the start of the video, unless you were very observant, you probably didn't clock that I was carrying a blade. All I've done, this is not particularly spy-like Nahkampfmesser. The sheath here has got just these two little prongs, and different versions have them in different lengths. Some have them, some don't, but many do. Okay, and they're mostly known as a boot knife for the Germans. So when the Germans carry them, often, but not always, as a boot knife. But if you're thinking from an SOE, OSS perspective, it's very easy to hide this weapon on your person because of these prongs. And it's a little bit easier than most of the other more well-known, well-respected and well-loved World War II knives. In its simple array, let's imagine my cover as a newspaper salesman, right? I can very easily attach the prongs to the inside of my lapel jacket. It has a relatively flat outline, especially compared to things like the K-bar. And I can very easily draw this and have it good to go. And where it's stored obviously dictates how it might be drawn, in a saber style grip, in an ice pick style grip, whatever you want to do. Put the pointy end in, the rest will figure itself out. But this very simple construction means that if I wanted this up my sleeve, like so, very simply, I could have it. And I could operate, talk, drink a cup of tea, have a pint of beer, hold a newspaper. You wouldn't know anything's going on until it's too late. Same with the inside jacket, same with the side of the boot, same with the inside of a scarf. There are so many places that this can hang, even environments. This is easy to clip in. So if you know where you might need it, it's very easy to hang and operate. It's small, it's thin, it's simple, but it's more than able enough to do the damage. So you can see why this might actually start to be a favoured tool of operators in Europe, because it's easy to get hold of, easy to hide on your person, very simple, very cheap, very common, doesn't give huge alarm bells away. They're everywhere. Europe's flooded with these after the First World War. Now, from a German perspective, and again, this is important, so I'll rewind a second. If you're practicing your World War II combatives and you're interested in blades, I recommend you get hold of these. They're dead cheap and you can practice storing them on your person. Yeah. So if you've got historical kind of, imagine mindsets, role sets, SOE, OSS, whatever, you know, what would it be like to have this clipped into a blouse, into a jacket, into overalls, you know, into a blazer, in a sleeve, in a pocket, in a belt? Very easy to do. Okay, so a very wearable weapon, a weapon that's easy to wear and easy to conceal and easy to draw is a useful one. If you think from the enemy having these perspective, you've got to imagine that many, if not most fighting German units, people will be having these, right? And you can't discount their skill at arms in using them. Boxing, wrestling, knife work, spade work, all that stuff, absolutely done by the Germans, as much, if not more, than pretty much everyone else too. However, These are commonly known as a boot knife. And you've got to imagine that a German World War II boot, I don't have a replica here, but you can imagine it's not too dissimilar to this Wellington, right? And the prongs make it very simple to attach this boot knife. So bear with me a second as I put this on. As you can imagine, it's spring here. These wellies have not seen servicing sometime. So you can see here down the side of the boot. Now you may opt to have the prongs on the inside or the outside, but let's just keep it here for sake of visibility. Now, if you imagine you've done your preemptive strike, you've done your edge of hand, you've done your chin jab, you've done your tiger claw, you've done whatever, and you've knocked a man down, right? You've knocked him down, you've either knocked him to a knee or you've knocked him on his ass. But you've got to remember that it's very easy and very ubiquitous for that self-same German to reach down to their boot, draw out their Nahkampfmesser, and now suddenly this fight is going to be very dangerous for you indeed. Very, very dangerous. So you can imagine for the Germans, very commonly, but not always, worn on the boot, there's a message there that if in your attacks you hit and then stop, you give the opportunity, especially for someone that's taken a knee or fallen flat on their ass, to draw that tool. And that's why you'll note, although it's subtle in many of the World War II Combatives videos, but not necessarily made so explicit in the books, that once someone is taken to the deck, they are kicking and stomping and chopping and finishing the job. And that's the difference between, say, some of the manuals and some of the lived experience and the videos. You can get a huge amount from there. You'll see that there is always follow-ups with boots and stomps to the face, to the neck, or if people are kind of somewhat crouched, somewhat prone, you are getting hammered with edge of hand blows. And it's quite simple, that if you knock a man down, instead of knocking him out, you offer him the opportunity to draw the handy and faithful Nahkampfmesser, and you're going to have a terrible time indeed. So it's always a reminder that once you start physically, it doesn't stop here. It stops when there are a puddle there, or you've run off that way. So that's with all combatives and World War II combatives in mind. You want to be all the way in, i.e. you've hit them in the neck, they started to go down, hit, hit, stomp, stomp, or you are stunning and running before they have chance to deploy a tool like the Nahkampfmesser. So really interesting tool, really awesome knife. Great to think of it from both perspectives. From the perspective of someone that might want to use it because of its versatility, its prongs, its ubiquitousness, and against people that might have this and habitually wear it on their person. But yep, you can pick them up from most military affairs, loads of places online. They were so common, which makes them really cheap, really affordable. If you wanted a period knife on a budget, this is a really cool kind of starter item. And yeah, think of it from two perspectives always. That enriches your thinking, and that's really part of the fun of this, to imagine the what ifs and the how comes and what if I. You know, these are the great ways to keep history alive and keep yourself thinking about it. So yeah, the Nahkampfmesser. It's not pretty, it does the job, and it's got many, many benefits you might not have considered.